Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Philosophy Fridays, probably coming out on a Saturday. This episode is kind of going to be talking about one of my favorite subtopics of history, alternate history. Specifically, were some events in history preventable? Now, there are plenty of events that would have happened no matter what changes in the scenario. Pompeii, for example, would have been destroyed by Mount Vesuvius unless we drastically changed the scenario so that Mount Vesuvius wasn't even there. Or, for another example, the Industrial Revolution. You could change the scenario so that it happened earlier than it did or even later, but pretty much everyone can agree that it would have happened eventually. These events are inevitable, set in stone, or otherwise meant to happen no matter what. Now, some people might argue that every event in history is set in stone and would happen no matter what we change in the scenario. For example, many historians believe that the First World War is an inevitable event in history. But could the scenario change to have prevented it? What if the European powers didn't have such complicated alliances that each pretty much had their own version of Article 5? What if those nations didn't have the military policy of building up the military to extreme heights in order to deter other countries? Could these factors have prevented the First World War from happening and thus the Second World War, or would there still have been a massive global war? That's the tricky thing with history. With so many factors in play, it's hard to tell if a small change will have a butterfly effect and completely change history, or if it'll make a small impact that isn't even noticeable. Despite this trickiness, however, there are events that could have been prevented with simple changes. On the night of April 14th, 1912, the crew of the RMS Titanic spotted an iceberg off their bow. In panic, the crew incorrectly turned the ship to starboard. This turn caused the iceberg to slit open the hull and led to its sinking. Now, we're not blaming the crew here. They'd been trained to make the turn as they did. However, if they had been told about Titanic's safety features, they would have known to hit the berg head on. If they had done that, the ship would have been able to limp to port in Halifax and tragedy would have been averted. Hell, even before they hit the iceberg, White Star Line could have prevented tragedy by getting Titanic lookout binoculars. With that overlooked tool, Titanic would have avoided its fate in those icy North Atlantic waters. Another tragic example that could be argued as preventable is the Rwandan Genocide. For 100 days from April 7th, 1994 to mid-July, an estimated 800,000 to 1 million Tutsis were murdered in one of the last genocides of the 20th century. Unfortunately for those murdered, the United Nations did not intervene enough to stop the genocide. The European countries that stepped in removed their white nationals and left behind any nationals that were of a darker skin tone. If the United Nations had given more support into protecting the Tutsis instead of other more important events in Europe, or even if the Europeans had stepped in and protected anyone they could, the Rwandan genocide could have either been prevented before it started, or it could have ended with only a few deaths instead of thousands. It's moments like these that we have to look for and keep a close eye on, because history very often repeats itself, and when it does, we need to make sure the event we are seeing repeated, or we ourselves are repeating, are preventable. Because if they are preventable, we should totally prevent them from happening if it's something awful like a war or genocide. Just imagine repeating an event as terrible as the Rwandan genocide because of something as preventable as sending too few supplies or manpower. Think it over, dear viewers. Thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. And don't forget to comment and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one.